This morning by way of the Georgia Legislative Network, but also people watching us live all over the world who are watching this committee. So since we are being broadcast, I want to remind the members and any witnesses to speak clearly into your microphone, and because so we can make sure that it is being picked up well. And if you do need to leave, please remember that your constituents are also watching and watching how we vote. Our first order of business this morning, we want to take up amending our House rules. As you recall, when we adopted the rules at the beginning of last year, we had 2 more members than we have now. So we'd like to lower our quorum by 1 from 6 members to 5 members, so we can go ahead and get started and take up the people's business without having to wait for more people to come. So do I have a motion to adopt the new rules as proposed? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor of adopting the new rules, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Rules are adopted. Our next order of business, Representative Elmala.
It's Beasley Teague, and I'll let you know when you can change it.
Thank you, Representative. I just have a
and she put the wrong, and I know, but for some reason, she decided to change it. You either call me by what I asked you to call me by, or just call me misrepresented.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Chairman, could I have a list of the people that's supposed to be on the committee? I don't have one. And you said it changed from 6 to, we changed the numbers on the quorum from 6 to 5 because we have less members. I don't see the.
When we started last year, we had Representative Tanner and Representative Butler.
I don't have that information here to know what we did.
We can get that for you.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We've got House Resolution 64 in front of us. I'd like to call Representative Williams to tell us about his proposition. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It's nice to get up early in the morning to get started. House Resolution 64 is really a simple resolution to be proposed in the constitutional provision to be voted on in November. 2 provisions. Give you a little background as to how this came about. And I was here in 1983 when we revised the Georgia Constitution. The Senate chose to say no more than 56 members and no multi-member districts. The House took an opposite view with the power structure at that time and said no less than 180 and allowed multi-member districts. The people of Georgia are frustrated by this multi-member district thing. They've talked about it many times that they don't want it, they don't like it. And so this proposed constitutional amendment would say that there will be no more multi-member districts, and the House body, the membership, will be no more than 180 members. That basically is what it says, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Is there any questions of Representative Williams from members of the committee? Representative Williams, I think you had your little first. Is that right?
Representative, what compelling reason is there for you to bring this as a constitutional amendment at this time? Is there any problem arising right now that speaks strongly for the need of our Constitution to be changed?
Representative Massey, I think it does. The people have expressed their displeasure with these multi-member districts. They don't know who their representatives are. You cover a larger area, and having more than one representative representing a certain area. We're talking about streamlining state government, reducing the size of government, and certainly I don't anticipate us ever wanting to go beyond 180 members. At one time in the 60s, we had membership of 205 members of the House, and that was way too big. And I think probably we stand now being one of the largest bodies in the nation. So I think people are wanting to reduce state government, the expense. I don't know exactly what it would cost for additional members. I know when we have a special session, it costs something like $39,000 a day to bring us back up here. So that's cutting expenses, and I just feel like that the people want the opportunity to express their views. They have already in the displeasure of having to know who their representatives are, and if you run in a multi-member district, you know how difficult it is to represent all your people. And we've said that we want communities of interest to stay together, and this is something that multi-member districts do not aspire to.
Any further questions, Ms. Reese?
Yes. My concern is about the growing population in Georgia and the growing size in miles and area that many of our representatives already have to cover in Middle Georgia and South Georgia, as many of those House districts are the size of some Senate districts. My concern is for the constituents that are out there, that they be able to have close contact with their representative, and that the number in a representative district not grow beyond a number where the representative can take care of the people in their district.
My response to that be that the Senate handles their business very well. They have single-member districts, and they represent their constituents very efficiently, and I think the House could probably do the same thing. I don't think we need to increase the size of the House.
Right, let's recognize Representative McClinton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question was similar to Representative Reese. My question is, considering the growth in the state of Georgia, we would confine ourselves to 180 members. And do we have any evidence that this is the best thing for the state of Georgia, not where we are today, but in the future?
Well, we passed this in
studies to
1983,
indicate-
and since that time, there's been no move to increase the size of the House. In fact, history shows that we've reduced it each time from 205 down to the 180. And I think that 180, if you had an increased population, at least you're going to be talking about communities of interest. When you split these districts up, you spread it over a larger area. You break up communities of interest that the legislators really don't have anything common with the people that they're representing. Single-member districts bring you closer to the people, and I think we need to stay with single-member districts.
One more.
Sure, go right ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little difficulty, if you would help me.
Okay.
If our population increases, and I'm not talking about multi-member districts, not multi-member districts, but single-member districts. If we leave the equation out of multi-member districts, would it be feasible then to not amend the Constitution, to keep it at 180?
I think it's wise that we do that. We're tracking the Senate, and it should have been done back in 1983, but the powers to be chose not to do that for various political reasons, that they may have wanted additional members of the House, which would have made it too large. But the additional population, even with multi-member districts, they're going to have to still represent more people, whichever way you go. But I just think the people are frustrated with these multi-member districts, and we just need to eliminate them and limit the size of the House.
Mr. Chair, I would just like to make a statement that the powers that be in 83 are quite different from the powers that be in 2006. And I would think possibly the motives will be the same.
That's up to each individual's opinion. I don't think that has anything to do with it. Certainly wasn't my intention to bring that into the bill today, but I'll leave that up to each individual's
Thank you.
feeling.
Chairman Ralston is recognized.
Chairman Williams, how many multi-member districts does the House have now?
I think it's 19. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman?
And
Currently, that was the question.
Yeah.
currently?
I was thinking it was 19 multi-member, but I'm not sure about that.
Follow-up question.
0. Okay. So I'm sorry. 0. Okay.
And follow-up question, Mr. Chairman.
Go right ahead.
Is it not true that that's the result of a federal court decision a couple of years ago that basically expressed disfavor with multi-member districts?
You're right. It did.
And one further follow-up, is it not true that our House is one of the largest legislative bodies in the nation now at 180 members?
You're correct.
The representative from South Fulton is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's your name? Mr. Williams, Representative Williams. In 1983, since you're the only person in the room probably that was here in 1983, at that time, I'm sure you didn't find it advantageous to have multi-member districts. And I could somewhat understand that if I was in the minority party in 1983. Being in the minority party in 2006, I don't understand why you would even expect or anyone that's in the minority party to vote for something that could possibly limit their ability to become the majority party. And that's what this bill to me seems to be doing. So I would like to say we are probably one of the larger General Assemblies on the House side, but my people, and I don't know about anywhere else, but the people that I've represented for 14 years are more interested in getting a representative that they can go on the door and say, Representative Beasley Teague, I need some help. Or Representative McClinton, I need some help with this, versus trying to limit the number and everybody can't get to their representatives. Georgia is one of the fastest growing states in the country. So we have to follow behind the slowest growing state in the country as an example and follow their lead instead of being progressive and doing what it would take in 2006 to make sure everybody is represented equally. Is that what you're telling me with this bill?
I'm thinking that everybody should be represented equally, and I think single-member districts in the limit of the House size certainly is adequate to represent your people. You start talking about multi-member districts and you go 50 miles the other way to try to find your legislator.
Yeah, I'm not talking about multi-member. I'm talking, okay, you want to eliminate here the multi-member, okay, but the number 180 when our state is one of the fastest growing states in the country. One of the fastest growing states. We have a county here that's the fastest growing county in the whole country. I mean, and so you're going to tell me simply because and in that county, you get the majority. You get the votes. So what is the problem with possibly having more than 180 legislators in the state of Georgia when we're growing by leaps and bounds? We just received over 8,000 people this past fall in the state of Georgia. Now, maybe they didn't come to your area, but they did come to mine and some other representatives possibly in this room. Therefore, why would we limit ourselves and not have other legislators to come to be able to be elected and increase the numbers so that we can represent them fairly? I mean, and it's important to me that everybody is represented, not just a segment of the people, those that the least of these that can't even get downtown Atlanta. I mean, everywhere. So I would think this would be your idea of being a representative. Since you were here in '83, I'm sure that piece surely hasn't changed. Or has it?
I'll just express to you this. I have never seen a move made to increase the House since 1983. Now, if that be the case and the way we're growing now, someone surely would have come along, such as yourself, and said, we need more members of the House. But I think the sentiment in Georgia with the people is we need to limit the size of government. If we start adding legislators, then you've got to add not only the legislators, but the staff, the room, and all the expenses that go with it. And I think it works well. It works well in the Senate for their single-member districts. They are limited to 56 senators. It's worked well for them, and I think it'll work well for the House.
Thank you. Let's let some others have some input. Let's recognize Chairman Yates for the purpose of inquiring against the Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this bill is far overdue. I came into the House in '81, and at that time I think I represented about 30,000 people, and now I believe I represent about 50,000. And I haven't seen any delay in service or anything. When I ran for office because the fellow before me, I wrote him 3 letters and he didn't answer any of them. I promised to answer all of them, and I've done that pretty well. And I think it works well. Several of us hired a lawyer to bring this thing to court to see that we don't have multi-member districts, which is an abomination if I've ever seen it. I served in one 2 years, and although I had a good partner in there and we worked together good, but it's confusing to the people, so multi-member districts is definitely should be out. Judges will never make multi-member districts. That ought to tell us something, I think. I believe that this is the best way to go, and it does not hurt anybody. I just can't imagine, as jammed as we are in the House now, where would the desk be? I just can't fathom how they would work in there in a business-like way with any more people in there. Thank you.
Any further questions from members of the committee? Representative Jones.
Mr. Chairman, I had a couple questions. Isn't it true that of the 8 states that are larger than Georgia in population, some of them the fastest growing in the United States, including Florida and Texas, all have smaller houses of representatives than Georgia?
That's true.
And furthermore, isn't it true throughout the nation there's really no relationship between, if you look across the states, which are pretty good experiments in government, that there's really very little to no relationship between the number of representatives and the population. A couple of the northeastern states with the smallest, New England states with the smallest populations, have the largest representative bodies. In fact, their districts range from 3,000 to 5,000 per, and then you go to California and Florida, it's the opposite end of the spectrum, and that we would remain, even with a fast-growing population, with in the top 5 of number of representatives in our House.
That's true.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, recognize Ms. Reese.
Representative, under current law, who has the authority to make changes on the number in the House?
It would have to be a constitutional amendment since it's built into the Constitution. It'd have to be brought as a referendum to the people to decide whether or not they want to increase the number.
Does the House not have the authority
I don't
to
think
change
so.
the number since the law states no less than 180?
If that be the case, we could go with just a regular piece of legislation, but I understand it takes a constitutional amendment to change the Constitution.
The way you have worded this, with
Yeah.
no more than 180. But
Possibly could take legislation and do it, yeah.
Any further questions? Seeing none, what is the pleasure of the committee? Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I must move to pass.
Motion do pass. Is there a second? Motion and seconded. All those in favor, let's signify by raising our hands. 5. All those opposed, like sign. 2, 3. On the motion, the do pass. The motion passes, and the bill, the House Resolution 64, will be reported to the House with a do pass recommendation. Chairman Williams, we thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for your kind response, and I appreciate the work of the committee. Thank you, sir.
Now, before we adjourn, we will meet Tuesday when we come back from the break. So we won't have a meeting next week, but when we come back from the break, we will be meeting Tuesday. I envision that some of the consent reapportionment bills will have been submitted by then. We will be meeting in room 606 rather than in this room, so that we will have access to the screen, so that the staff can present those plans to us on the screen, and they can be broadcast over the network at the same time. So look forward to seeing y'all in 2 weeks. Meeting adjourned.